skin matters, your voice matters, your input matters, and that we need you to build the society we want to live in.
Today on Voices for Change, marking Women's History Month, the progress and the work still ahead.
I have dedicated my career to ensuring that the words engraved on the front of the Supreme Court building, equal justice under law, are a reality and not just an ideal.
From historic nominations to the trailblazers who forged the path decades ago.
We're not the ones to walk 2 steps behind. We'll walk with you, but not behind you anymore.
Welcome to Voices for Change. I'm Greg Lee. We started this show to give a megaphone to the marginalized and celebrate those working for equity. Today, we honor women. During this Women's History Month, we pause to honor the contributions made in all sectors by women. We also acknowledge the inequities that still exist for women and girls. Right now, the U.S. Senate is considering a historic appointment to the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman nominated to the High Court. The nation also mourning and honoring the life of the trailblazing Madeleine Albright. The first female U.S. Secretary of State is being remembered as a force. She died at the age of 84. No question the pandemic disproportionately impacted women in the workforce. The latest Bureau of Labor statistics show that men have recouped their labor force losses since 2020, while more than 1 million fewer women were in the labor force at the start of this year compared to the start of the pandemic. Women of color experiencing the brunt of those job losses. Some encouraging news. A new report shows wage growth for women is increasing. According to the Atlanta Federal Reserve's wage tracker, earnings for women were up 4.4% in February from a year earlier. That's 1/3% higher than their male counterparts. Women's wage gains have now outperformed men's wage gains for 6 straight months. Women who switched jobs also did well, as 31% received compensation packages that were 30% better than in the jobs they left. To mark Women's History Month, we have gathered 3 powerful women from 3 different sectors to have a conversation about the progress that's been made towards gender equity and the work that still needs to be done. We are grateful to be joined by Leslie Alfaro from the Bay Area Council, where she focuses on gender equity and diversity issues. Dr. Carol Tang, Executive Director of the Children's Creativity Museum in San Francisco and lead of the California Girls in STEM Collaborative. And Jennifer Smith, co-CEO of the Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative, or BOSSI, which connects young girls to organized sports and physical education. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. I'll start by asking you all what Women's History Month means to you. Leslie, I'll start with you.
Great. Thank you for having me today. For me, Women's History Month is really a time to reflect on all the women who have come before me and who have made so much change in the world. It's really exciting to see all the progress that has been made, but also a little bit disappointing to see that we still have so far to go. I always say my goal is to work myself out of a job. So ideally, we would be able to reach that gender equity and people would be able to work freely and with the same opportunities.
I think for me, it gives us a chance to think about how women's equal participation in science, technology, engineering, and math will really help make a difference for all people going forward, girls and boys. When women are able to provide their creativity, their perspective, their skills to the kind of solutions that we need for the future, we have a better world. So that's, to me, having women have equal participation and equal voice in creating our future is really key.
For me, Women's History Month is very near and dear to my heart. My mother was a history teacher, and I think about all the women who showed up in history books, but especially many of the women who did not show up in the history books yet, and that we need to celebrate year over year over year.
Leslie, the pandemic forced a lot of women out of the workforce due to a number of factors, not the least of which the gender pay gap. How important is it to give those women the support they need to come back to work?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that we have seen is that as jobs have started to come back, we are seeing men take up at the same rates that were pre-pandemic. But for women, these numbers are just not coming back. And overall, for women of color, this is even more stark. So one of the things that we've really been looking at are what are the barriers that are keeping women from returning to the workforce? Things like childcare, elder care. There's sometimes a bias for people who have gaps in those resumes. So really figuring out what can we do for women to make sure that they have those resources that they need, and also work with employers to make sure that they're not unintentionally leaving women out of the return to work.
For a long time, we thought we need to encourage girls to take math and engineering and AP chemistry and biology. It turns out that girls are taking those classes, and in some cases, they're outperforming boys on standardized exams. So the barriers seem to be more about identity and confidence and feeling welcome in the field. I think some studies indicate that girls have a lot of choices about what they want to do with their lives. And when they think about the kinds of barriers that they're going to face in science and engineering, they're like, why should I bother? Let's go do something else where I can feel welcome and make my difference in the world. And we want to be able to have girls have the resilience and that drive to say, despite the challenges, I have something to contribute and I want to be part of that.
Jennifer, your organization, speaking of identity and confidence, was founded by U.S. soccer legends Brandi Chastain and Julie Foudy. Several women soccer players recently settled an equal pay lawsuit. How important of a step was that for the sport and for women?
Very important and a long time coming. The mantra that we always use here at Bossy is, if I can see her, I can be her. And now that becomes, I can be her and I can get paid like him, which is really, really important for everybody. And at Bossy, every day we're working very, very hard to make sure that all girls have access to that same dream.
Yeah, Leslie, as the Bay Area Council sort of identifies challenges and opportunities for our region, what are some of the sustainable solutions that can drive women closer to equity in the business space?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of our member companies take up different programs internally. It seems that whenever companies are leading this work with that CEO, C-suite support, you see some of this change. So things like employee resource groups or women's mentorship and sponsorship groups that are really helpful. Recently, or in 2021, the Bay Area Council, in partnership with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, began an initiative called the 25 by 25 initiative, which is really helping companies pledge to increase representation of women and people of color.
This month, the Smithsonian has a special If Then She Can exhibit celebrating women STEM innovators. When it comes to your work, how critical is it that young girls see women like you who are doing the work in that space?
So I'm a former paleontologist before I came into the museum world to try to inspire girls and boys into science. And so I recognize that seeing somebody who looks like you and doing the kinds of things that you only dreamed of doing is really key. So If Then is one of our partners at the National Girls Collaborative Project, but there are also other databases, and so many women want to volunteer and go to Girl Scouts and schools and expanding your horizons, which is a conference for girls. I think that, tapping into those women who've become scientists to be that representative and that ambassador to girls, as you say, as they can see them and see that, there is a role for us and that there are definitely communities out there that welcome the voice and the power that girls can bring.
Jennifer, you have several programs. One of them, Bossy Girls, is an after-school program where you focus on elementary school girls. 70% of them socioeconomically disadvantaged. Why is it important to meet young girls where they are to give them the opportunities they need?
So there's some great research out there. EY did a wonderful study in around 2014 that looked at the number of C-suite executives who were female and what traits they had in common. And one of the biggest common traits was that 94% of them had played sports through high school. Wow. So it is an incredibly compelling tool for leadership development. And we believe that all girls should have access to that.
In closing, I would love to have you all leave an enduring message of encouragement directly to the girls and women watching. And Leslie, we'll again start with you.
It's exciting to see what is changing. So I think for me, it's always look at the bright side and just keep fighting the good fight.
I'd say that, our world, our future depends on science and technology breakthroughs. And if girls and women aren't part of that solution, then we're all the poorer for it. So my enduring message for girls and women is that it matters. Your voice matters, your input matters, and that we need you to build the society we want to live in.
And my message is to play something, play anything, part of a team, whether it's organized sports that are very traditional like soccer and basketball, or less traditional like rock climbing. Those things are really important, not because of a college scholarship and not because of standing on an Olympic podium, but because of the character traits they develop and the leadership they build along the way.
This is just out of the world. We just wanted to do a job for our country.
Still to come, the women who inspired a cultural icon and a generation of working women. A conversation with two of the original Rosie the Riveters.
I want them to know that they can do and be anything.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson with an emotional word of encouragement for young people during her confirmation hearing. The Supreme Court nominee wrapped up 4 days of marathon question and answer. The Senate will now decide whether or not to confirm her to this lifetime appointment. For some insight on the significance of this nomination, we are joined by retired Alameda County Superior Court Judge Brenda Harpin-Forte. Judge, certainly thanks for your time. First, what does this historic nomination mean to you?
This historic nomination means that our country is ready to recognize the contributions of African American women. And more importantly, the country is ready to recognize that the voices of African American women should be heard as the highest court in the land makes these important decisions that will affect everyone.
Your Honor, Judge Jackson brings a long resume to this job, but can you describe the kind of perspective she would bring to this court because she is a Black woman in America?
Well, she'll bring a perspective. She'll bring a perspective based upon the experiences of Black women in this country, which are very different than white males, than white women, than Black males. There's a different perspective. And that kind of diversity on the court that brings that perspective will end up making or creating, I should say, a higher quality of justice coming out of our top court.
Do you wonder what took so long for us to get to this point in 2022?
Yes, if I can be just frank and provocative, it's racism. It's just pure and simple racism and sexism that has taken us so long. It's inconceivable that we have ignored a large majority of the population, that there have been assiduous steps taken to keep from the Supreme Court the voice of African American women.
Judge, you are a role model. Judge Jackson is a role model. What do you hope little girls feel when they see her and say, hey, she looks like me and she could be on the nation's highest court?
They should feel so empowered. They should walk with a better spring in their step. They should not hold their heads down. They should know that they can achieve anything they set their heart to do. And with hard work and determination and with not being discouraged, they can be what they dream of being. And as she said, she had to persevere. You just have to continue to persevere. And you have to understand that there will be a lot of noise in the background that will suggest to you on so many different levels, from the images you see on TV to articles to everything else, that you are not worthy, that your Black skin is not to be valued and treasured. But Judge Jackson has shown that, yes, you deserve to be where you are if you work hard enough to achieve it.
History is also being made by the newest San Diego Appeals Court judge, who is the first Latina confirmed to the California Supreme Court. San Diego Appeals Court Judge Patricia Guerrero was approved by a 3-0 vote by the state's Commission on Judicial Appointments. Judge Guerrero is the daughter of Mexican immigrants growing up in the agricultural Imperial Valley. She has worked as a prosecutor, law firm partner, Superior Court judge, and sat on the 4th District Court of Appeal. This month, we celebrated Rosie the Riveter Day. The media icon became a symbol for the millions of women who stepped into jobs at shipyards and factories during World War II. I spoke to 2 of these women, now in their 90s, who are still leading the charge for gender equality.
Marian Suze, you were a draftsman when you came out from Oregon. Describe the call to come here.
Actually, I came to California from Oregon to be the babysitter for my nephew, because my sister Phyllis was one of the first women that was hired as a welder by Kaiser. I enrolled in the local high school, Richmond Union High School, for my senior year. And I got married during that year. But when I graduated, I had an art class teacher that recommended me for a special class at UC Berkeley. It was a 6 weeks course in engineering drawing, and I learned to draw blueprints. And so I was hired right out of the classroom to go to shipyard number 3 in the engineering department as a draftsman. So I have to say that my dad was in the service, so that this was a patriotic thing too for us.
Marian, you were a welder, and this was hard work. I mean, there's no question, but I have to imagine there was a great sense of pride every day.
I didn't think I could be a welder. I'd never thought about being a welder, but when I went to school, we had to go to school for 2 weeks. And the first thing the instructor said, you have to learn 3 things about welding pipes. You have to know the size of, you pick out your pipe, and then you have to know the size of the rod to weld that pipe and the amount of heat. If you got it too hot, it would burn a hole, and if it was too cold, it would stick to the pipe. So you didn't let that happen too many times. I did it one time.
We should tell people that you were instrumental in the reason that we have this day in California to honor the work that you 2 and everyone else has done.
Well, we never visualized anything like this. I mean, this is just out of the world. We just wanted to do a job for our country, and didn't know that that we were starting a trend and giving women hope for better jobs later on. We had no idea, but I'm proud of it.
Marian, when you look back on the legacy here and you look around, you see this museum, how proud are you of what you accomplished, that women of all races, of all backgrounds came together to build these ships at a remarkable pace and to help the country?
Yeah, I never thought it would ever come to this. When I came out here and was working in the shipyards, I never thought about anything in the future being this. But then when they started talking about having a Rosie the Riveter here with the National Park Service, my daughter's the one that told me about it, so I came down and started volunteering. So I've been with them since about 2005.
Marian, when you consider the women that are upstairs waiting to speak to you, who look to you 2 as role models, how does that make you feel?
Pretty proud, but just overwhelmed, really. I'm so pleased that it worked out that way. It shows that women have evolved from the meek little person in the kitchen, you know, to a mighty woman. Yeah, good for them. Good for them.
And my next question to you, Marian, what would be your message to young women? Because as you know, there are still struggles today for pay equity, for women's rights. So what would your message be to?
When the girls come in here and they're young, I tell them never say you can't do it, because you can. You haven't tried, and if you don't try, you don't know if you can do it or not. I didn't know I could weld pipes, but I did it. So you don't know.
Marian, I would ask you the same question. What is your message for those young girls, and why you should advocate for your skills and your talents?
Well, I think if you truly have a goal, don't let your gender get in the way of it. You can do what you put your mind to, and stick to it.
I'll ask you both in closing, how important it is that these stories continue to be told, that the legacy of the Rosies never goes away. And Marian, I'll start with you.
Well, like I say, they don't know they can do it, so let's keep encouraging them. There's women in the White House. There's women all over working important jobs.
And we need equality, equals. We're not the ones to walk 2 steps behind. We'll walk with you, but not behind you anymore.
White, black, yellow, this, that, green, red, doesn't matter. Most people cannot afford to do it. So the more that we can and the more that we give that opportunity to the kids, the better our sport will be.
Coming up next, one of the largest tennis tournaments in the world right here in California. Their focus on gender and social equity after the break.
Nadal's run, and he's the first American men's champion here since Agassi in 2001. It is a day.
American and Southern California native Taylor Fritz did the unthinkable, ending Rafael Nadal's 20-0 start to the season at the BNP Paribas Open and in front of a home crowd at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden to boot. And while tennis fans were treated to a show on the court, the impact of the tournament will be felt well beyond the court. The sponsors and organizers of the BNP Paribas Open making efforts to leave the community and the sport better than they found it.
Indian Wells has a new champion.
Taylor Fritz is the king in California.
2 first-time winners took home trophies and big prize money at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells. Many refer to the 2-week desert tournament as the 5th major. And while growing the tournament has been a focus for former tennis champion and assistant tournament director Peggy Michael, doing so equitably has been a priority.
We can do anything. We can play tennis, basketball, we can be executives, we can be assistant tournament directors. It's just important that women continue to grow.
This tournament, since we really got on board in 2010, is all around making sure men and women are rewarded, respected the very same way.
The tournament offers equal prize money for men and women and has done so for more than a decade. Michael credits the work of tennis legend Billie Jean King in paving the way in the sport.
Tennis, especially for the girls, it's a sport that they can play and they can play for life, but you know, it's a good sport.
BNP Paribas renewed its focus on social equity causes this year, including $20,000 scholarships for 4 students, 2 young men and 2 young women from a local high school.
They say when I'm graduating, I would contribute back to the community. And honestly, it's moving and I think it's a life-changing experience for them, but I can tell you for us.
And I get teary when I think about it, and I think the kids and, you know, and the parents and all that they do, and, you know, they try so hard, and they're very humble and very grateful.
BNP also teaming up with tennis legend John McEnroe and his tennis academy. The Mac 1 program provides financial and personal assistance to young tennis players from disadvantaged backgrounds.
My goal 10 years ago when I started my academy was to just, in a nutshell, try to give as many kids an opportunity to do this as possible, to make it accessible, like affordable.
How one can leverage tennis beyond a French Open, an Indian Wells, or the Davis Cup, or the Billie Jean King Cup, and leverage tennis to support social causes and just making a contribution to the communities you live in.
The students receive hands-on training from John McEnroe and his brother Patrick in New York. The program not only giving kids access to what can be a very expensive sport, but helping them reach new goals like college.
We've had a lot of kids that have gotten full scholarships at a lot of Division I schools, and that even if they don't make it, I believe will change their life.
As we say goodbye this month, a point of personal privilege here. Our team would like to thank all women for who you are and who you continue to be. We would especially like to show gratitude for the women in our lives who work so hard, who inspire us, stand by our sides, and who remind us equality requires all of us. Thanks for watching today. Be good to each other.